The new world order today seemingly more out of control than ever. Welcome to Faith Nation, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jenna Browder. And I'm John Jessup. Well, from climate change, to corruption, religious intolerance, to raging wars in the Middle East, tonight we examine the world's growing political unrest. President Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Syria sparked angry protests both abroad and here at home. Eric Phillips kicks us off tonight with the top story.
The president has been getting backlash on almost every hand over this decision, but he maintains it's time for America to get out of what he calls endless wars. And Trump adds he would move to obliterate Turkey's economy if the country does anything he considers off limits. Monday, U.S. flagged military vehicles could be seen leaving the Syria-Turkey border. It came just hours after the White House released this statement saying, in part, the United States forces, having defeated the ISIS territorial caliphate, will no longer be in the immediate area. All of this following a Sunday phone call between President Trump and Turkish President Erdogan. Since then, a flurry of presidential tweets defending his decision that many say paves the way for Turkey to invade northern Syria. Trump tweeting, "It is time for us to get out of these ridiculous, endless wars, many of them tribal, and bring our soldiers home." Even some of the president's most loyal supporters speaking out against this move that puts the Kurds who partnered with U.S. troops at major risk, like Senator Lindsey Graham this morning.
This is a big win for Iran and Assad, a big win for ISIS.
Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, a Trump appointee, tweeting, "We must always have the backs of our allies if we expect them to have our back. Leaving them to die is a big mistake."
We are most unfortunately abandoning our friends in the Syrian opposition.
Benham Ben Taleblu is with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies.
I think the U.S. is going to be creating a vacuum with this withdrawal. I think Turkey is going to get more involved. And I think Iran and its proxies and partners is going to become more emboldened. And that is a recipe for disaster right on Israel's doorstep.
Senator Rand Paul has offered a lone voice of support for the president's decision. A Turkish invasion would endanger the lives of thousands of Christians in northern Syria, something Pat Robertson addressed on Monday's 700 Club.
The President of the United States is in danger of losing the mandate of heaven if he permits this to happen.
Still, many are hoping the president will do what he has in the past and change his mind about withdrawing troops from Syria, but that's not looking likely. The other wild card, what will happen with ISIS detainees in the region? On Monday, ISIS leader Abu al-Baghdadi called on followers to strike where they can, storm prisons, and spark a resurgence of ISIS. Meanwhile, the president has been frustrated with European nations who will not reclaim their ISIS fighters who were captured during the war. Eric Phillips, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Eric. Well, Turkey's president initially agreed to a temporary ceasefire. At the same time, he vowed to crush the heads of America's allies, the Kurds.
And caught in the crossfire and chaos, Kurdish Christians who hoped and prayed President Trump would change his mind. Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell revisits the fallout from Jerusalem.
Before the critical Tuesday ceasefire deadline, SDF forces say they've evacuated the strategic town of Ras Al-Ain. But it may not satisfy President Erdogan, who not only says he wants to ethnically cleanse Kurds and others along his southern border, but also recently said he wants Turkey to have the nuclear bomb. According to retired General David Petraeus, the U.S. pullout in the face of Turkish aggression created an historic loss.
It took 10,000 Syrian Kurd losses, years of effort by our special forces and others, and by the way, our British and French allies who are also having to pull out because they can't stay if our infrastructure is not there. It took all of that, and then in a single period of a couple of days, we are abandoning all of that on the battlefield.
For Syrian Christians, it created a catastrophe. Along the Turkish-Syrian border, reports are emerging of Christians living, dying, and fleeing in the face of a Turkish onslaught aided by jihadist troops. They hope their pleas reach the Christians of America. And Sari Khani, Rouhani TV interviewed Zia Musa, the only Christian left in town. He said the Turkish state is destroying the Christian churches and heritage and trying to annihilate the Christians from this region. Rabbi Abraham Cooper of the Simon Wiesenthal Center learned more about the plight of Christians after the Turkish invasion.
CBN was kind enough to supply me with a very lengthy email literally from the front lines. It was so disturbing, and I was so disturbed by it that I actually sent it along to the Secretary of State and to the Vice President.
Cooper, like many other leaders, hope President Trump will reverse course.
It is a disaster. The president has been known to change course pretty quickly. I think I would join those who hope and pray that he flexes more muscle, both in terms of the sanctions, which have an impact on Erdogan, and if necessary, using American air power, which is still massive, to enforce a red line.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the ceasefire was designed to save lives.
The Vice President could not have been more clear when we were speaking with President Erdogan in that Turkish-controlled space that there wouldn't be attacks on minorities, that this was about getting a ceasefire, a secure area, and that this, in fact, will save lives.
The ceasefire did open a window for people to find lost family members cut off by the fighting. CBN contributing correspondent Chuck Holton brings this exclusive report on the efforts to rescue wounded Kurds trapped in the town of Sarikani.
Thank you, Chris. And after the Pentagon ordered the withdrawal of America's troops in Syria, some were dispatched to secure the country's eastern oil fields and also to prevent ISIS from rebuilding.
The Turkish military took advantage of the fact Americans left the northern buffer zone. And as Chuck Holton reports, it has had devastating consequences for people living there.
Turkey and Russia now patrol northern Syria side by side as Turkish President Erdogan moves ahead to annex much more land bordering his country. Local Syrians showing their displeasure, with some pelting a Turkish patrol with rocks near the town of Derek. One protester was run over by a Turkish vehicle and later died. Turks fired what they claimed to be tear gas to disperse the protests. The questionable chemical, however, sent 10 unconscious people to the hospital, a result rarely caused by tear gas. Doctors at this hospital in Tal Tamr have treated more than 700 casualties so far.
The Kurds in this area have faced so much injustice from this invasion, and we sometimes feel powerless to stop the bloodshed.
So this reconnaissance we're doing of the frontline area here just south of Sarikania shows that this YPG position is surrounded on three sides at the moment by the Free Syrian Army, off to the west, to the north, and to the east. But they're not quite as worried about being attacked from those positions as they are about indirect fire. That's mortars and artillery, because they just had a round land back behind them. They don't know if that's like a reconnaissance by fire or if the enemy's actually bracketing them to try to bomb this target. The other thing we have to worry about is what we can hear overhead right now, and that's the Turkish drones circling, looking for a target. Many of the wounded at this hospital are victims of Turkish drone attacks. Dave Eubank, leader of the Free Burma Rangers aid group, has been working in the area for more than 3 weeks.
We're at a mobile casualty collection point. We had to hide our vehicles because of Turkish drone strikes. In the last 3 days, 26 people have been killed by drone strikes in this area alone.
It's clear these drones are going after more than just military targets. Eubank's own marked ambulance took a hit November 2nd, wounding 2 and killing one of their ethnic Kachin medics, 37-year-old Zhao Sang. He died on his baby daughter's first birthday. But Turkey's president is undeterred, vowing to continue the fight against what he calls terrorists, while local aid groups estimate more than 300,000 have fled the area. Meanwhile, medical people on the ground have labeled these civilian drone strikes as war crimes.
And so we asked for a stop to the Turkish drones. 5 ambulances have been taken out earlier. And so this has got to stop. It's evil.
All we want is to be able to live in peace like any other nation. We just hope President Trump will remember us, and maybe then he can do something to help our situation.
Chuck Holton, CBN News, Tal Tamr, Syria.
Coming up, revisiting the deadly Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka and the lives lost. A father tells CBN News what he wants the world to remember about his young son.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religion he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. Well, Easter Sunday is the most sacred day on the calendar for millions of Christians around the world, a day to celebrate the resurrection of Christ.
But for residents in the capital of the South Asian country of Sri Lanka, the holiday was marred by a deadly massacre that claimed the lives of more than 250 people. Ephraim Graham has us look back on a day when the rejoicing quickly faded to mourning.
Sri Lankan police say the 6 near-simultaneous attacks on 3 Catholic churches and 3 hotels were carried out by 7 suicide bombers. Inside the churches, devastation. The blasts hit during Sunday Mass. Church pews were left shattered, debris strewn everywhere, and blood was splattered on a statue of Jesus. This morning, the Archbishop of Colombo was demanding justice.
And find out who is responsible behind this act, and also to punish them mercilessly, because only animals can behave like that.
A government official says a local Muslim terrorist group called National Tawfiq Jamaat is responsible.
This is a very cowardly attack at a time when, innocent people would be worshipping God on a auspicious day such as Easter Sunday.
More than 30 foreigners were killed in the deadly blast, including several Americans. President Donald Trump sent his condolences through Twitter, writing, "We stand ready to help." As the investigation goes forward, police say officials failed to heed warnings from intelligence agencies about the threat of an Easter Sunday attack. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Thanks, Ephraim. Sri Lankan officials moved quickly to stop a second wave of attacks planned that Easter Sunday. The swift action saved an untold number of lives.
While the thwarted plot and subsequent arrests came as good news, nothing could fill the void for families who lost loved ones. And that includes an American father whose only child was killed in the bombings.
He spoke with CBN's Eric Phillips just 2 days after his young son's funeral.
It was the most difficult thing that I think a father can possibly do. And that was compounded by the fact that Kiran was the most amazing person that I've had the privilege to know.
By all accounts, the 11-and-a-half-year-old not only enjoyed life, but was also very advanced for his age, especially in math and science.
The things that an 11-and-a-half-year-old talks about are not usually these big, grandiose goals. But his career ambition was to be a PhD neuroscientist. And that was because he figured out that that's how he could apply his talents to help other people in the most significant way.
Kiran attended Sidwell Friends, an exclusive private school in Washington, D.C., but he was studying abroad in Sri Lanka, staying with his mother and maternal grandparents.
About a year and a half ago, she thought that would be a good experience for him to spend a semester abroad, and I had to agree. I mean, it's an incredible cultural experience for a 10-year-old.
It worked out so well that he stayed an additional 2 semesters. On Easter Sunday, he and his family were having breakfast at the Cinnamon Grand Hotel when a suicide bomber attacked. While his mother and grandmother survived their injuries, Kiran did not. A piece of shrapnel piercing his heart. His father got the tragic call in the middle of the night. Alexander had seen his boy just weeks before when Kieran visited him in San Diego for spring break.
Last time I hugged him goodbye was when he went back to the airport to go back with his mom to Sri Lanka. I keep hearing his voice around every corner, keep expecting him to say, "Hi, Dad," and go on with one of his great questions. I still have that feeling that it's all a bad dream.
Alexander told us it's important for as many people as possible to know just how much was sacrificed in this senseless violence.
He's articulate, he's funny, his sense of humor, his altruism, his ingenuity, his love for others.
And he wants his son's dream of using his talents to help others to count for something.
I have wonderful memories, but I have a hole where all of the future memories were going to be. His teenage years that he won't have, his adult years that he won't have, his family that he won't have, his children that he won't have, and what the world lost.
So sad. Well, when we come back, how speaking out for human rights in Hong Kong may hobble talks to end America's ongoing trade war with China.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
For half a year now, the world has watched the fight for freedom and democracy play out in Hong Kong.
And while back here at home, Congress has been sharply divided along party lines on everything from health care to impeachment, support for Hong Kong protesters is the one thing Republicans and Democrats have been able to agree on.
And that bipartisan backing put pressure on President Trump to defend Hong Kong's democratic aspirations. And as Gary Lane reports, it's also forced him into a delicate dance in a bid to end America's ongoing trade war with China.
Members of Congress sent a powerful signal to China Thursday by standing with the pro-democracy protesters of Hong Kong. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi.
If America does not speak up for human rights in China because of commercial issues, we lose all moral authority to speak about human rights anywhere in the world.
23 protesters surrendered to police and left Hong Kong Polytechnic University Thursday after the worst anti-government violence since Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests began.
The protests have continued because the people of Hong Kong see what's coming. They see the steady effort to erode the autonomy and their freedoms.
The United States has long stood as a beacon of freedom and a country that supports and calls out to those who are demonstrating for their rights. We need to be a more forceful and effective voice in Hong Kong.
The Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act is more than just symbolic. Government officials responsible for violating human rights in Hong Kong could be hit with tough sanctions, including bans on their visa and freezing of their assets in U.S. banks. Another bill approved by Congress suspends the sale of munitions to Hong Kong police. Meeting with former Defense Secretary William Cohen in Beijing Thursday, China's foreign minister said the U.S. move is a stark interference in China's internal affairs. But protesters say police have killed some of them, like this demonstrator who was shot point blank in the chest last week. Hong Kong police have also reportedly sprayed chemical-laced water on pro-democracy protesters. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy says China President Xi Jinping is quickly becoming a pariah on the world stage.
He is destroying one of the economic jewels of the world, but certainly one of the economic jewels of China.
Andrew Duncan is co-producer of a Netflix documentary on Hong Kong's umbrella movement. On this week's episode of the CBN News Channel program The Global Lane, he said President Trump needs to sign the bill, despite the potential threat it may pose to a U.S.-China trade deal.
Well, we've yet to hear from the President of the United States, who needs to firmly speak out in defense of democracy, in my opinion, and firmly speak out in support of Hong Kong's rights under the joint resolution.
Although news reports say the president will sign the bill, the White House won't say if he will. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Why some fear the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Europe could reach the shores of America. We explain after the break.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Across Europe, the situation for Jews there is becoming more and more dangerous, with anti-Semitism on the rise. As Dale heard reports from Brussels, that could have implications for Jewish people living here in America as well.
Adolf Hitler would have loved it, afloat in this year's carnival parade in the Belgian city of Aalst. It featured a Nazi-style depiction of greedy Jews sitting on a pile of money, one with a rat on his shoulder. And when confronted by Jewish groups, the town mayor defended it. This is the same carnival that in 2013 featured a Nazi railroad car carrying Jews to a death camp. Sometimes the evidence of anti-Semitism in Europe is obvious, and sometimes it's subtle, like when Jews quietly leave a neighborhood because it isn't safe anymore. I traveled through Brussels with Jewish leader Joel Rubenfeld to visit his boyhood synagogue, which had to be sold because the area became too dangerous for Jews.
I felt insecure coming here with my family. So it's a better thing that we left this place and that we go to a safest place.
Jews have been in Brussels since the 1st century. They're still here, but many are leaving because of anti-Semitism and threats of violence.
It's not the alia, the big alia, but the internal alia. People who are leaving their city, remaining in the same country, leaving their city to go to a safer city. Or people leaving their neighborhood because they feel threatened as a Jew there in this neighborhood and going to another neighborhood where they feel more secure.
The Jewish Museum in Brussels, where an Islamic terrorist killed 4 people in 2014, shows the 2,000-year history of the Jews in Belgium. But it's the more recent history that Europeans seem to be forgetting.
So it's people who say, yes, but it's not anti-Semitic, it's humor. But you know, this kind of humor is killing Jews. Meaning Jews have the power, Jews have the money, Jews have the control. All these very basic anti-Semitic cliches.
In Germany last year, violent attacks against Jews almost doubled. In Britain, anti-Semitic incidents have risen for a 3rd year in a row. Anti-Semitism even began to show itself in France's Yellow Vest movement. In Paris, American writer Nidra Poller says it showed that revolts against the wealthy and powerful inevitably turn against Jews.
Anti-Semitism is something like the fumes and the fire that come up out of the center of society when the surface is crackling apart.
A new Hudson Institute poll shows most Americans now believe anti-Semitism is growing in the United States. It's already infected the Democratic Party, and Rubenfeld has a warning to Christians. You're next.
More problems will come, you know. It's just the beginning. We know this. We know that about anti-Semitism, that anti-Semites, they start with Jews, but they never finish with Jews.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, Brussels.
Thank you, Dale, and that wraps up tonight's edition of Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.